There are a couple things about the Marine Corps in particular that really drew me in. The first was attorneys are not siloed into a JAG Corps. We're line officers just like everyone else. And at the time, women were not allowed to serve in combat arms specialties. So I was hopeful that I would be a good lawyer someday. I obviously had a great legal education. I thought that would be a great way for me to contribute, but I didn't want to be part of a siloed side corps. I wanted to be like a real Marine like everyone else. And that was the opportunity the Marine Corps gave me. The second is, if I'm honest with myself, I'm the type of person who really strives to be the best in everything that I do. And if you asked me which service presented the biggest challenge and would perhaps give me the biggest payoff on the back end in terms of pride in what I'd accomplished and striving to be a part of the best and most elite part of our military, that's what I got out of the Marine Corps. So, when people told me it was the hardest and the best one and the most unreasonable, and being a Marine is a crazy thing to do, that reverse psychology worked pretty well on me.
On today's show, a conversation with a fascinating Marine with a unique life story and a unique Marine Corps story. Today, I talked to Lieutenant Colonel Lindsay Rodman. Her resume is outstanding. Here are a few of her accomplishments. She has degrees from Duke and Harvard, a deployment to Afghanistan. She's been a White House Fellow, plus Deputy Legal Counsel to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Associate Deputy General Counsel for Intelligence in the Office of the General Counsel at the Department of Defense, and much more, which you will learn all about in this conversation with Lieutenant Colonel Lindsay Rodman. My name is Josh Roe, and this is Tomorrowtown, Tennessee. Lieutenant Colonel Lindsay Rodman joins us today. First of all, just looking at your bio and resume and all the things, I mean, an accomplished human being. I mean, Duke and Harvard Law School, Marine Corps, White House, Pentagon, accomplished legal career. I mean, I could go on. Well, when you look at that, path, what do you think about at this stage in your life as far as the things you've accomplished and what has driven you to do what you've done?
So it definitely wasn't a path. And it certainly wasn't one that I was, following others who had done similar things. I feel like life has taken me where it has taken me, and I'm incredibly grateful for all the opportunities that I've had. But it's definitely a modern career, right? For me, especially as a woman, to be able to gain access to the incredible schools that I went to be able to serve as an officer in the Marine Corps. You highlighted that I was a White House Fellow. I mean, that was a really special experience for me. But also, part of that story, some of the other stuff in my background is, I've worked in nonprofit management, led nonprofits. Part of that was that I got married and we had to figure out how to negotiate life with family and kids and accommodating dual careers, which is a real modern problem. And that's, how I ended up in the reserves, which opened me up to have some other amazing opportunities, but also allowed me to continue to serve in the Marine Corps, which was kind of the best of both worlds and really important to me. That path then brought me back on active duty for a little bit. So that's been pretty exciting. And, I'm just grateful now that I get to be settled in a career I love, where I continue to be able to practice law and deal with the most interesting issues in the world, both in the Marine Corps and outside the Marine Corps in my job in the Pentagon. But you are correct that when people see the circuitous way that I got to where I am, I get a lot of follow-up questions.
I have a kind of an off-base question, probably, but use the word modern in there twice. You describe your career as modern and your life situation with your husband modern. Curious how you think about that and the language you use around that, as far as, just that idea of maybe the path that you're on wouldn't have been that path at a different time, maybe, or something like that. Like, how do you think about that?
I mean, I don't normally describe it that way, but you kind of inspired me. We're here today to talk about the 250th birthday of the Marine Corps. So trying to contextualize the way that I've been able to serve as an officer in the Marine Corps in its 250-year history, I can't imagine having done it any time earlier than the past 2 decades when I've been fortunate enough to serve.
And this seems like a good place to mention my connection to Colonel Rodman. We are members of a team of ambassadors for the Marine Corps' 250th birthday. The Marine Corps birthday is November 10th. The team was assembled by Marine Corps Community Services, and that project was spearheaded by retired Colonel and current Chief Marketing and Innovation Officer at Marine Corps Community Services, Ralph Hernandez. So later in the episode, when we mention Ralph, this is the Ralph we're talking about. Now, back to Colonel Rodman.
So there's been a lot of trailblazing done by a lot of other people, men and women in the Marine Corps, to facilitate the very rewarding and incredible career that I've been able to have. But it really does feel quintessentially modern in the sense that it's something that couldn't have happened before today.
Yeah, and I didn't plan to ask you about this, but while we're on the subject, I did a story a couple of weeks ago with there's a group here. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's a music therapy program that they work through the songwriters in Nashville. Like they'll pair them with veterans and telling their stories and this kind of thing. And they have a class for women and talking to some women who've been in the program about their experience in the military and obviously some challenges. But then through this process of talking to the ambassadors, talking to Riley T-Jack and talking to you, like there's so many different variables and factors and experiences. Can you speak to that a little bit? It's kind of, women in the military in general, but also just how there's a lot of variance there as far as experience and what you might experience.
Yeah, my experience in the Marine Corps has been overwhelmingly positive. I am, as they say, drenched in Marine Corps Kool-Aid. I love being a Marine. It's why I continue to serve in the reserves. To stay on top of being a Marine and trying to do well and right by the Marine Corps when you also have a side career and a family and all of that is not. I don't take that lightly. It takes a lot of work, but it's a joy because being a Marine is really important to me. So. I am grateful that I've had an excellent career, and I've had incredible, frankly, men look out for me. I've had very, very few women who I've worked with who have been senior to me throughout my career. And I've never had like a woman who I reported to or who was like actually my boss or a leader or mentor in that way. So I'm grateful for all the men who came in front of me and have been outstanding leaders and now peers and subordinates. I also do not want to trivialize the experience of other women, and I have had my own share of completely unacceptable behavior and unacceptable positions that I've been put in because I'm female. And even to this day, there are people in the Marine Corps, and certainly when I was more junior, there were people in the Marine Corps who had real difficulty with even just the presence of women in their presence in the context of the Marine Corps. So that stuff is real. But I've been quite grateful that, in the balance, I've had an incredible career and I'm grateful to be able to continue to serve.
And let's talk about that career a little bit. You mentioned before we started recording here, and reading about your path. You're in the Marine Corps, you went to the reserves, but you've been on active duty. You're still on active duty currently as well. Tell me about some of that. And say it again.
I'm on active duty until tomorrow.
Tell me kind of the things you've been working on recently in your career that has brought you back to active duty and that kind of thing.
I got super lucky. So professional military education is incredibly important for all Marines, enlisted and officers. And I'm someone who really enjoys being in a school environment. That's maybe not a normal trait for all Marines, but there's definitely plenty of super smart and academically inclined Marines. And I was at a career transition stage and thought it would be really neat to attend PME as a senior officer if I was given the opportunity. So I applied to the Reserve PME Board, Professional Military Education Board, and was really fortunate to be selected for Marine Corps War College. So I have been on active duty, attending Marine Corps War College, learning how to be a senior officer at the 0506 level. But really, it's the last school that's available to officers. So they sort of tell you that they're trying to teach you how to be everything from an 06 to an 010, which is a big range and a lot of different jobs. But it was an incredible experience. And if I can sort of tell a slightly longer version of the same story.
Please do. Yeah.
I actually applied twice for PME. So a couple of years ago, I was in between jobs and I applied for the PME board. And I was, thinking it would be it was a good time for me career-wise to spend some time on active duty if I had the opportunity. And during the time after I accepted, I actually was hired in my current job in the Pentagon. And that was a tough decision to make because it really did not make sense for me to start that job and then immediately turn around and do a year of active duty. Reservists really have to be thoughtful and careful about how to give the Marine Corps what it needs from you and what will help you be a good Marine Corps officer, but jeopardizing your whole civilian career is also not wise. So I actually had to tell the Marine Corps no to War College, and I was concerned that I had totally killed my Marine Corps career. And my boss, who is a retired Army colonel, found out about it about a year later and yelled at me for having passed up what an incredible opportunity it was to have been selected to go to Marine Corps War College. And I explained to him the circumstances about how and when I had to renege on the Marine Corps, and he understood where it was in my hiring timeline. And he committed to writing a letter to the board if I tried to go back to explain why I had to do it the first time and that he had my full support to do it again. And so I went back to the board with that letter. I could not believe that I got selected again. And I was able to go on active duty this past year. And then I'll return to the same job in just a couple of weeks after I take some leave with my family. And I'm so, so grateful because the employers who support reservists doing this kind of work are so essential. I couldn't have done it without his support. I wouldn't have felt comfortable doing it. And I would have had to really sacrifice a lot in terms of my involvement with the Marine Corps if I didn't have a supportive boss, but I did, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, that is outstanding to know that leadership exists out there. And I know there's a lot of great leaders out there as well. And I hear that story often from really more officers than enlisted of the thing you decide not to do and then concerned how that might affect you down the road and stories of how it has affected people down the road. And so that's a real career concern. The people who are not in your position may not quite understand.
Yeah. But some people do, or some people are open-minded enough that they want to understand and learn and ask the right questions. And that's incredibly important.
Absolutely. At what point did you decide to join the Marine Corps? Was this after Harvard Law School that you decided? At what point was that decision made?
It was a brilliant idea I had during Harvard Law School. And I do get this question a lot. So people do wonder what in the world you're doing at Harvard Law School that makes you think the next step should be going to officer candidate school in the Marine Corps. I felt so privileged and was so just delighted to be at Harvard Law School. Like that was such an incredible opportunity that I had. And I've always been someone who's public service oriented, that I was not someone who was inclined to go to a law firm and stay there for the rest of my life. I have many classmates who did that and they have incredible careers. There's nothing wrong with that. It just was not a good fit for me and my personality and how I wanted my life to be lived. So I was looking for a way to serve. I think I had a little bit of a adventurism bug. So I wanted something that would be a challenge that might take me overseas, that, for someone who is happy to be a lawyer. I love being a lawyer and I don't mind the desk job aspect of it, but I didn't want my whole career to be pinned down at a desk. I loved the variety that the military offered. And before I went to graduate school, I did not have peers or friends who normalized military service for me. I grew up in a part of the country where there was no sort of presence of military members. I had so this hat right there is, that's my grandfather's, that he wore in World War II. But he was drafted, and there's a long story there, but he didn't go overseas. He served stateside. It was very important to him, informative for him, but I never even learned those stories until after I decided to join the military, because it wasn't really a part of our family history before that. So I just had no context for the military until I got to graduate school. Went to Harvard Law School. I also got a master's at the Kennedy School. And at the Kennedy School in particular, we had a bunch of officers who were coming out of military service and using that master's program as a transition. And that was exposure that I'd never had before, to just friends, peers, normal classmates who made the military seem accessible and a really good fit for what I wanted to do. I knew when I went to law school that I wanted to work in the national security sphere in some way, but the military just was too foreign for me to take it seriously as an opportunity until I got that sort of normalizing friendship aspect with my classmates. And then, of course, there's a question of, if you're going to join the military, there are many reasonable ways to do it, and the Marine Corps is probably the most unreasonable way to do it. There are a couple things about the Marine Corps in particular that really drew me in. The first was attorneys are not siloed into a JAG Corps. We're line officers just like everyone else. And at the time, women were not allowed to serve in combat arms specialties. So I was hopeful that I would be a good lawyer someday. I obviously had a great legal education. I thought that would be a great way for me to contribute, but I didn't want to be part of a siloed side corps. I wanted to be like a real Marine like everyone else, and that was the opportunity the Marine Corps gave me. The second is, if I'm honest with myself, I'm the type of person who really strives to be the best in everything that I do. And if you asked me which service presented the biggest challenge and would perhaps give me the biggest payoff on the back end in terms of pride in what I'd accomplished and striving to be a part of the best and most elite part of our military, that's what I got out of the Marine Corps. So, when people told me it was the hardest and the best one and the most unreasonable, and being a Marine is a crazy thing to do, that reverse psychology worked pretty well on me.
I think a lot of us who didn't listen to the Marine Corps on some level feel the same thing. That thing of like, oh yeah, this is the best. So you want that, right? Yeah. Of course, who doesn't, right? And I know that was part of my decision as well. Your Marine Corps career and your legal career I think when people think of lawyers, sometimes they're thinking about, TV lawyers, something like that, right? Like your path is one of those of like, no, these are all the things you could do with the law degree. And can you speak to that? And also, these are things you can do in the Marine Corps, maybe people don't realize as well. Can you speak to that? Just kind of the experiences you've had, both from being a lawyer and being a Marine. I mean, because both those paths seem kind of not obvious, at least to me, when I saw your resume.
I've been really fortunate to have had some really great experiences in the Marine Corps. When I first came in, most attorneys start out in the courtroom. So you say, it doesn't necessarily look like the movies. It actually looks a lot like the movies. So like if you've seen A Few Good Men, that's like kind of what our courts look like. Not all the details are accurate, of course. And do Marine Corps lawyers secretly reenact those scenes all the time? Yes. We do. We do it for fun all the time. It's awesome. But I started in the courtroom. So I started as a defense attorney in Okinawa. And if there's anything that you know about Marines in Okinawa, you can probably guess that they love to get into all sorts of, misconduct that requires legal adjudication. Obviously, my clients were all not guilty, but there are Marines who get into some misconduct. And of course, I kid. I had a range of clients. Some were not guilty, some were guilty, and I did my best for them. It's a fantastic learning environment.
Of course, but I think if we know Marines, we know that sometimes trouble comes along. We know those things, so we understand that.
And the way that they get in trouble is so creative. I mean, we had like the best job because we got to know like all of the ridiculous things Marines were doing. Not okay. So for the Marines watching, please, law abidingness, very important. But it made our jobs interesting and dynamic. And, a lot of the time it is a young Marine who has done something, frankly, idiotic. But you are the person as a defense attorney who is either helping them take accountability, which was 90% of the job, which is really important, and to help them do it in a way that honors both the misconduct, but also like salvages the rest of their life, right? And so, having someone come to your office, having done something wrong, or being accused of doing something wrong, and being really scared about like, oh my gosh, what is this going to do for the rest of my life? And you are the person standing in between, a better outcome for them and like the worst possible outcome for them, and trying to shepherd them through that and trying to help them out under those circumstances. It was very rewarding billet. I'll admit I wanted to be a prosecutor. So I was like, I don't want to end up having guilty Marines. But I got a lot of really, really incredible experience, and it was a very meaningful first job. I deployed to Afghanistan as the operational law attorney for 1st Marine Division. And that was obviously kind of the bread and butter of what Marines do as attorneys, right? When you think about a military lawyer, our job is to be next to Marines and provide sound legal advice as they navigate the thorniest problems. And the problems that involve solid legal questions are often also the problems that involve important moral questions, important ethical questions, political questions, strategic questions. So it's a really sort of eye-opening but important role that lawyers play in combat. And I was grateful for the opportunity to be able to serve in that way. I did some legal assistance after returning from deployment, and that is also just a rewarding way that lawyers can support Marines and their families, or military service members in general and their families. So, Marines can't deploy or do their jobs if they're concerned about legal troubles and, the financial and family instability or anything like that. And so the fact that we're able to just sit there and provide these things that are, frankly, really help smooth the administration of life and family in ways that don't exist on the outside. Nowadays in my civilian capacity, if I need to go find a notary for a paper, for a document that I have to get signed or whatever, it's a huge pain. We make that really easy for military service members because there's so much paperwork associated with, deployment and going overseas and helping families get ready for that kind of thing. So that also is really important exposure. And that exposure to the law has actually been the most useful, right? Because when I get people like, the crazy cousin or, former college roommate who's like, I have a legal question about divorce or home sales or interest rates or, like all of those miscellaneous but everyday legal questions. That's not what I studied at Harvard Law School. It's not what we do in the courtroom. We certainly don't do that in war, but everyone needs to know that stuff for just everyday life management. And so I feel really grateful for that exposure, even though it's not something people think about as like what military lawyers might do on a normal basis. From there, I came to the Pentagon, and I served as an action officer in the front office of a general officer, which is Pentagon speak for, jack of all trades, get things done person. That was an inside view of how the Pentagon works and how the Marine Corps works in the context of the Pentagon, and providing legal advice to the Commandant and managing the whole Marine Corps legal community. And I have always gotten a kick out of serving in the Pentagon. Most Marines, when you ask them, do you want to go to the Pentagon? They will run screaming in the other direction. They're like, no, I didn't join the Marine Corps to run around a giant office building in Washington, D.C. And I completely understand that. I think the Pentagon is just a fascinating place. It is where all of the highest level, most serious, most profound decisions are made about our country and its future. They're the decisions that impact Marines every day. And so being able to serve at that level and provide sound legal advice, I found really rewarding. And I just think it's a fun place to work. There are many people who've served in the Pentagon who will see this and they will just be like, she's crazy. But I have really enjoyed my time there. Having worked on the Marine Corps side a little bit, I got asked to go over to the Office of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So I moved over there and served as a legal advisor. And, that was just incredible to be exposed at that level and to be planning with the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff what he's going to say about sexual assault in the military, or what he's going to say about human rights compliance, or some of the major issues that I was able to cover. It was just like very broadening. And from there, I got selected as a White House Fellow, which was a really unique experience. And it enabled me to serve in the White House on the National Security Council staff for a year. So those are, the kinds of exposure that early in your career most Marines don't have, but I just got lucky and got those kinds of experiences early on, and just super grateful for that whole path that I was able to ride. And I can keep going. I've had many assignments, but that was also the point at which I transitioned into the reserves. And I can talk more about my reserve assignments if it's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, so, man, how fascinating is all that? I mean, like you said, to be right there with the Joint Chiefs as they're making decisions about how they address things, to working with the junior Marine who has been a knucklehead out in the town on Saturday night. It's just I can't imagine the amount that you've learned from all facets of that. Yeah. Tell me about today. You said so your last day on activity is tomorrow. So what happens? What happens on Monday? What's the civilian job look like for you at this point? Tell me some of those things.
Sure. So in my civilian capacity, I'm an attorney in the Office of the General Counsel of the Department of Defense. So when I said, I love running around the Pentagon giving people legal advice, I double down on that. That's what I do for a living now. It is important in life to find your place, know it, and just, hold on to it if you can. So I'm really grateful for that job. I work mostly with the intelligence community and on emerging technology issues like AI and, what is the law and what's our policy going to be on big questions when it comes to those issues. Fascinating work. I feel so lucky to be doing it and to work on those issues. I teach at GW Law School also as an adjunct, and I always feel like, when I tell my students what my job is, they're like, "That's a job?" I'm like, "Yes, you could, as a lawyer, you can work on these issues." So just having their reaction back to me is quite cool. I will be leaving Marine Corps University, where I was a student at Marine Corps War College, and I am going to Marine Forces Cyber. So MAR4 Cyber, as we call it, is the service component assigned to Cyber Command. And I am actually going to do my first ever non-legal job for the Marine Corps. After attending War College, I really wanted to leverage some of the broadening and incredible education that I got to do a job that was more operational and sort of used some of our operational and strategic thinking and learning. And it's a neat opportunity for me, since I'm a full-time lawyer in my civilian job. I thought it would be interesting to do something a little bit different on the Marine Corps side. So I'll be joining them the day after I come off of active duty. So I'm going to have to get trained up as a cyber operator. I don't even really know what that entails, but I'm excited to find out. And then, I go back to the Pentagon in my old job, and they've been so gracious about keeping my seat warm while I've been on active duty, and I'm ready to head back.
Thanks for indulging my curiosity, because all of it's fascinating. And so I know the reason that we're talking today is about the Marine Corps' 250th birthday and the Ambassador program and these things. So when you think about Marine Corps history and your role in it, how do you think about that? Well, what are you the most proud of as far as the role you've played? Tell me some of those ideas.
It's really strange to think of yourself as a part of Marine Corps history. I'm not even sure how to answer that question. I'm so proud of the Marine Corps and its history. I'm so grateful to be able to learn it as my history, right? My history as a Marine, as a Marine Corps officer, as a female Marine, as a Marine judge advocate, in the future as a Marine Corps cyber operator, right? All of those things. So it's a proud history, and and I've been really grateful to be able to learn it as I've been a Marine. As I kind of mentioned earlier about my coming into the Marine Corps, I didn't have a strong military background in terms of my family or knowledge of the Marine Corps. I knew the Marine Corps based on its current reputation, right? Like culturally, how does the United States think about the Marine Corps? So I knew it as the best service, the most elite service, the one that I definitely wanted to be affiliated with. But I'll admit that I was super ignorant about the Marine Corps' history. And part of the joy of being a Marine has been how much we incorporate our history into how we teach Marines about who we want to be in the world, so how to lead, how to behave ourselves well and properly, and how to conduct wars in a way that is consistent with American values. So that's something that I've taken joy in learning along the way. I'm sort of intentionally dodging your question because situating myself in the history of the Marine Corps is a very strange idea. But I guess, for me, I just feel really privileged to be in the Marine Corps at this time. And this isn't a knock on the Marine Corps. It's just sort of the way that history has unfolded. I know that it's unique that I get to sit here right now as a, female mom. I have a spouse who has a civilian career, and we're trying to balance all of that. And just to be able to be, where I am, literally getting to be a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps feels like a real blessing and something that I'm quite grateful for. And I know that a lot of the Marine Corps history has paved the way for me to be able to do this right now.
Yeah, I agree with all that you said, especially about feeling like you're a part of Marine Corps history. And I didn't really think of it that way until I've done some of these interviews. And other Marines and Marine Corps veterans have said that when you think about it, it's like, yeah, you're right. It's a relatively short history in the scheme of the world and whatnot. And it's like, yeah, whatever small role we played. I was a reservist in the 90s. I was never deployed, but I did my contract. I went and served, and very proud of changed my life. And so it's one of those things of yeah, we everyone who has done it plays a role, and everybody's role is different. But yeah, we're all part of that story somewhere in there. Maybe some smaller, some bigger, obviously. But yeah. And tell me this: how did you get chosen for this ambassadorship program? As far as the birthday, what did you think? When I talked to Ralph and he invited me, I was kind of like, "Are you sure you want me to do this?" And what was your thought with that?
What I said too. Okay, so how did Ralph rope me into this? Is the question. I saw the list of the other ones, and I was just like, "This." I am delighted and grateful, and I will do whatever the Marine Corps asks me to do to help celebrate the 250th. But I genuinely am so humbled to be in this crew because the other folks you have like really truly are making Marine Corps history. I'm just delighted to be here. But when I was still on active duty and I was selected for White House Fellowship, I was the first Marine White House Fellow in 10 years from the active duty roles. And there wasn't really a strong institutional memory or understanding of what the White House Fellowship was. I think that piqued people's sort of interest about like, who is this random captain who wrote herself orders to the White House to go serve? It was like, I was breaking a lot of brains when I came into that role. And he was at Marine Corps Recruiting Command at the time. And I don't know how he found me or how he learned about me. I don't recall, but they learned, I guess, by reading my White House Fellows bio thing that they put out in the press release, that I'm from the Upper East Side of New York City, which is not where a lot of Marines are from. And I think being female, my mom is from South America, so people don't always know that by looking at me, but I have a strong personal connection to being Latin American, and it's a part of the culture that I grew up with. And so for folks who like to see Hispanic representation among officers, I was such an anomaly for the Marine Corps Recruiting Command, like how did this person with no prior military exposure from the Upper Side of Manhattan, who went to Harvard Law School, who's female and Hispanic, how did she want to even be in the Marine Corps? And so Ralph and I started talking, and they actually made a short video that they put on Facebook about me and my family, which was mortifying.
I've seen it, and it's great. And just so you know, it's outstanding.
It took about a minute for my Marine Corps War College classmates to find that somewhere on the internet and send it out. So I was like, all right, well, I guess now you guys met my mom. But Ralph, he's a great person. And I think he had always, I guess he told me that he'd kept my story in the back of his head as one that is different enough. And the reason that I'm willing to go along with this stuff, even though I do find it mortifying to be like on social media with your family and whatnot, is because I never had that prior example to follow, right? So like, as much as it's not particular, I'm not someone who's super comfortable being blasted out on social media like that. I don't have strong social media presence myself. I understood like it would be awesome if more women, more Hispanic officers, more people from New York City or from larger urban centers who don't have as much exposure to military culture and people and like that normalizing influence of like, oh yeah, Lindsay did it, so you could do it if it's of interest to you. So that was meaningful to me. And so I think he, I guess, kept the uniqueness of my story in mind and asked me if I'd be willing to tell it again. And so I'm happy to do that for the Marine Corps and certainly to celebrate the 250th.
Well, that's an outstanding story, and I appreciate your time. I'll be respectful of your time. Thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate that, and it's an honor to talk to you today and to know you. You're very impressive, and it's been a pleasure to spend 37 minutes with you here. It's been outstanding. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. This is a great opportunity, and happy birthday to the Marine Corps.
A big thank you to Lieutenant Colonel Lindsay Rodman for this conversation on Tomorrowtown, Tennessee. This podcast is a production of NewsChannel 9, Fox Chattanooga, and Sinclair Broadcast Group Chattanooga. I hope you join me again real soon.